Captain Lyanna Hayes stood at the edge of the crumbled monument, the air heavy with the scent of ancient dust. The planet before her, once a thriving hub of alien civilization, was now little more than a graveyard of forgotten relics. She had landed on Zathar X to investigate an anomaly, a strange signal emanating from the heart of the ruins. It had been weeks since she'd found the coordinates, and the deep space scanner aboard her ship had verified the location multiple times. But now that she was here, standing face to face with the legendary Xelfar armor, she could hardly believe it. The armor was massive, nearly twice the size of a human body, and made of a sleek, metallic substance that shimmered under the dim red sun. It sat in the center of a long-forgotten arena, the remnants of ancient alien script carved into the stone surrounding it. The Xelfar was rumored to have been created by an advanced species eons ago, designed to test the worthiness of those who sought its power. Some legends said it could grant immense strength, while others claimed it was a sentient being, one that rejected all who tried to wield it, except the chosen. The idea that anyone could truly claim it seemed like a myth, just another lost story in the archives of galactic history. Her boots echoed in the silence as she stepped closer, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. "This is it, Lyanna," she whispered to herself, barely able to contain her awe. Her hand shook slightly as she extended them toward the armor, touching its cold surface. The moment her skin made contact, the air around her seemed to hum. There was an electric pulse, almost as if the armor were aware of her presence. Then, without warning, the armor's surface rippled. Lyanna stumbled back, her pulse quickening, and her heart skipped a beat. The armor rejected her, just like the countless species before her. A powerful energy force shot from the armor, knocking her off her feet and sending her crashing into the stone wall behind her. She gasped for breath, struggling to regain her composure as the armor's energy faded. Confused and a bit bruised, Lyanna stood up, her eyes still locked on the relic. "Well, that wasn't exactly what I expected," she muttered, rubbing her sore side. Despite the rejection, she couldn't help but feel intrigued. Was the armor rejecting her because she wasn't worthy? Or was there something else at play here? Lyanna dusted herself off and stood tall. She wasn't one to back down easily. If anything, this only fueled her curiosity. The legends of the Xelfar said that no one had ever claimed it, but perhaps, just perhaps, she could be the first. With renewed determination, she stepped forward again, ready to try once more. Lyanna stood in the shadow of the massive armor, her heart still pounding from the force of the rejection. The stone walls of the ancient arena seemed to close in on her as she watched the Xelfar armor return to its dormant state. It was as if nothing had happened at all, and yet everything had changed. The rejection hadn't been violent, but it had been definitive. She knew, deep down, that the armor wasn't merely a piece of ancient technology. It was something more. It knew. "All right," she muttered to herself, taking a deep breath and brushing the dust off her uniform. "You want a challenge? Well, you're about to get one." Her mind raced as she stared at the armor, trying to piece together what she knew. She'd studied the legends of the Xelfar extensively before her expedition, but no amount of research could have prepared her for the sheer force of what she'd just experienced. The alien texts spoke of a test, one that no species had ever passed. Many had come seeking its power, believing that it was a weapon or a tool, only to leave empty-handed, or worse, never to leave at all. Lyanna knew she had to approach this differently. If brute force wasn't the answer, then maybe patience and insight would be. Over the next few days, she set up camp near the armor, refusing to leave. The desolate planet had no inhabitants, no distractions, just the ruins and the mysterious relic that had brought her here. She spent long hours studying the armor's design, running diagnostics on her equipment, and scanning for any hidden signals or clues the armor might be giving off. As she worked, Lyanna noticed something strange. The longer she stayed in the presence of the armor, the more she felt a subtle connection to it. It wasn't physical. It was something deeper, almost as if the armor were aware of her presence and testing her resolve. She could feel it in the way the air shimmered around the relic, the way the energy pulses seemed to respond to her thoughts. On the fourth day, after countless failed attempts to activate the armor, she decided to try something different. She stripped away the technological gadgets, the scanners, and the analyzers, and approached the relic with nothing but herself. Her heart beat steadily in her chest, her thoughts calm but focused. "Why did you reject me?" she whispered, her voice steady and clear. "What makes me unworthy?" To her surprise, there was no immediate response, no pulse of energy, no surge of power. Instead, she felt something like a presence. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The armor seemed to consider her, to study her in return. Lyanna's hands trembled, not in fear, but in curiosity. She closed her eyes and reached out once more, determined to understand this ancient, sentient artifact. "I'll keep trying," she vowed softly. "I won't give up." And for the first time since her arrival, the armor seemed to hum, its surface flickering faintly, almost as if it had heard her. Lyanna's days bowled together, each one spent in quiet observation and steady determination. The Selfar armor, as unmoving as ever, loomed before her, silent, enigmatic. But something had changed. In the stillness of the ancient ruins, she no longer felt like an outsider trying to unlock a forbidden mystery. She felt as if she were being watched. It wasn't an eerie feeling, nor one of dread. It was the subtle, comforting sensation of being understood. On the seventh day of her solitude, she decided to rest, lying on the cold stone ground beneath the armor. The sun above set in slow, deep hues of red and violet, casting long shadows across the arena. The stars slowly began to reveal themselves in the sky, the ancient, endless expanse overhead a stark contrast to the ruins below. As she lay there, half dozing, Lyanna felt a quiet hum in the air. At first, she dismissed it as the wind passing through the broken pillars, but it grew louder. It was a pulse, a rhythm, a beat, one that mirrored the steady thrum of her own heartbeat. She opened her eyes, her gaze drawn to the Selfar armor, which now seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. A soft pulse of energy rippled from the armor, though this time it wasn't rejecting her. The energy felt like a call, subtle, but undeniable. Without thinking, Lyanna rose to her feet, her body moving instinctively toward the relic. She reached out to touch it again, her fingertips brushing against the cool surface. This time, the armor responded. The pulse intensified. The air around her crackled with electricity as the armor's surface began to shift and ripple. The metallic skin of the Selfar shimmered, then separated, revealing intricate, almost organic patterns beneath. It wasn't just an artifact, it was alive. And in that moment, Lyanna felt it. The armor wasn't rejecting her at all. It was choosing her. A surge of energy flooded through her, and she gasped as the armor's seams began to wrap around her body. It was like slipping into another world. Every fiber of the suit, every curve of the armor seemed to mold perfectly against her form. The sensation wasn't painful, but exhilarating, as though her very essence was being woven into the fabric of something ancient and powerful. As the armor settled into place, Lyanna felt a strange connection to it, a bond that transcended the physical. She could sense the armor's thoughts, its awareness, and for the first time, she understood its purpose. It wasn't just a weapon or a tool. It was a test. The Selfar sought not those who were physically strong, but those who could endure, adapt, and believe. Believe in themselves and the possibilities of the unknown. Her vision blurred for a moment as the armor interfaced with her mind, displaying complex symbols and blueprints. The knowledge flooded her senses, but it wasn't overwhelming. It was empowering. The connection was perfect, symbiotic. She stood there, breathing heavily, her heart racing. The Selfar had accepted her, and as she looked out over the desolate planet, She knew this was only the beginning. Lyanna stood motionless, her mind racing as she tried to absorb what had just happened. The armor, now fully encasing her, hummed with energy. She felt the surge of its power within her, stronger, faster, more agile. Every movement felt fluid, effortless, as though the Excelthar and she were one. It was exhilarating and strange all at once. The ancient relic had transformed her, making her feel as if she could face anything, anywhere, anytime. But as she marveled at the change, the sudden, unmistakable rumble of an approaching ship shattered her moment of triumph. The ground trembled beneath her boots. Instinctively, she reached for her blaster, but the weapon seemed unnecessary. Her senses were sharper now. Her mind was clearer. She could feel the presence of others drawing near, as if the armor had heightened every part of her being. The sky above darkened as a massive shadow loomed overhead. A fleet of ships descended, cutting through the crimson haze of the setting sun. There was no mistaking the insignia. Black and red banners adorned the hulls of the vessels. The Virak. Lyanna had heard of them. Of course, every explorer had. The Virak were a brutal, cunning race of conquerors, known for their unmatched military prowess and terrifying strength. They were the stuff of galactic nightmares, a force to be reckoned with. And they were here. The largest ship, a war vessel bristling with weapons, settled down in the arena with a thunderous impact. As the hatch opened, the Virak commander, a towering figure clad in black armor, stepped forward. His voice echoed as he surveyed the ruins, then fixed his gaze on Lyanna. "You are the human," the commander growled, his voice a deep, rumbling vibration. "The one who dares to wear the Excelthar, the relic that has tested every race and found them wanting." Lyanna's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't respond immediately, but the weight of the moment felt heavy on her shoulders. She could see the Virak soldiers behind him, their eyes filled with disdain. But there was also something else, curiosity. The Excelthar had never been worn by any creature that wasn't an alien. Until now. Until her. "I don't seek to control the Excelthar," Lyanna said, her voice steady. "But if you think you can take it from me, you're mistaken." The Virak commander's lips curled into a cruel smile. "We'll see about that." With a growl, he motioned to his troops, and they advanced, weapons raised. Lyanna's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. With the armor, she felt something new, something dangerous. She could feel the power pulsing through her. But it wasn't just the armor's strength. It was her own. Before the first soldier could take another step, Lyanna moved. In an instant, she was a blur of motion. The Excelthar enhanced every movement, every decision. She sidestepped the first soldier's strike effortlessly, using the momentum of his swing to throw him off balance and send him sprawling across the arena. The second soldier barely had time to react before she closed the distance between them, disarming him with ease and knocking him to the ground. The commander roared in fury, clearly underestimating the human in front of him. "You think you can stand against us," he bellowed. But Lyanna only smirked, her voice cool and confident. "I don't have to stand against you. I just need to outsmart you." The battlefield had become her canvas, and the Excelthar had given her the tools to paint the perfect victory. Lyanna stood amid the wreckage of the Virak soldiers, their weapons scattered across the ground, their once proud leader lying unconscious at her feet. The battle had been swift, too swift for her liking. She knew it wouldn't be long before the Virak commander's forces regrouped, but for now, she had time to think, time to breathe. Her body buzzed with the aftereffects of the armor's power, but there was something more. Her mind was clearer than it had ever been. The Excelthar was not just an artifact of untold strength. It was something deeper, something far older, far more complex. As she stood there in the quiet aftermath of the skirmish, the armor began to hum softly, its energy radiating through her. And then, as if by instinct, a flood of images and symbols surged into her mind. Alien diagrams, shifting geometric shapes, and strange, ancient languages. It was overwhelming, but it wasn't chaotic. There was a pattern. Lyanna closed her eyes and focused, letting the images wash over her. As the armor resonated with her, she realized it wasn't just transmitting information. It was teaching her. The blueprints and alien designs weren't random. They were blueprints for creation. The armor had not only chosen her, it had also begun to guide her, to share knowledge with her that no human had ever known. It was as though the armor was offering a key to unlock a door that had been closed for millennia. The flood of knowledge slowed, and Lyanna opened her eyes. She could now see the purpose of the Excelfar. It was never meant to be a weapon. It was a test, a selection, designed to find a worthy individual, one capable of understanding its true purpose. The armor was not a tool to dominate. It was a tool to elevate. It sought to bring about a new age of understanding, to offer the power to shape the future, not with sheer force, but with wisdom, adaptability, and compassion. The realization hit her like a shockwave. She wasn't just a pawn in a larger game. She was part of something much greater. The Excelfar had rejected countless others because they had sought domination, control, and power. But it had chosen her because of something deeper, something uniquely human. The drive to learn, to adapt, and above all, to choose a better path. It wasn't about defeating the Virak or any other alien species. It was about leading, guiding, and showing the galaxy that strength didn't come from brute force alone, but from the ability to innovate, to think, and to create a better way. Lyanna realized that she wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for something far greater, the future of humanity. The armor pulsed again, as if in agreement. She wasn't alone. She had been chosen for a reason. Lyanna's thoughts were a whirlwind as she surveyed the battlefield. The Virak commander, still unconscious at her feet, represented a fragment of something much larger, a universe in turmoil. The armor had shown her a vision, and she now understood the stakes. The galaxy was not merely divided by physical borders or warring factions. It was divided by mindsets. The Virak, with their need for control and power, represented one side of the coin. The other was humanity's untapped potential, guided by ingenuity, adaptability, and most crucially, the belief in progress. But Lyanna wasn't naive. She knew that while her mind had unlocked a path to wisdom, it was going to take more than insight to change the galaxy's course. There were still battles to be fought, battles that could mean the difference between chaos and order, between survival and extinction. She had to choose how to wield the armor's power. And that choice had never been clearer than in this moment. A low rumble interrupted her thoughts. The remaining Virak forces were regrouping, and their ships were lifting off once more, hovering ominously overhead. Their numbers were vast, more than she could face alone. Lyanna took a deep breath, clenching her fists. She had the power now, but it wasn't about brute force. It was about strategy. A strike against them here and now could push them back, but it wouldn't stop the war. What she needed was something bigger, a symbol, a message, something that would change the very course of the conflict. Lyanna. The voice echoed in her mind, the familiar sound of the armor's interface. She froze, the sudden communication sending a chill down her spine. The armor was speaking to her, but it wasn't like before. It was clear now. It was giving her a choice. Choose your path. The armor's voice resonated, not in words, but in thoughts, images, and concepts. You may wield the power to destroy or the power to unite. It is within you. The Virak ships hovered closer, their guns trained on her position. Her mind raced, the weight of the decision pressing on her. She was alone, outnumbered, but not powerless. She could destroy the Virak forces in a single, overwhelming strike. But what would that prove? More destruction, more death. She could end the conflict, but only by perpetuating the cycle of war. Lyanna's gaze shifted to the horizon. The sun was setting, its dying light casting a warm glow across the battlefield. There was a chance, a single fragile thread of hope. If she could reach out to the galaxy, if she could make them understand the message she had unlocked, there was a way to prevent this cycle from continuing. A way to stop the war before it could consume everything. Lyanna. The armor's voice came again, more insistent now. Make your choice. She looked back at the Virak fleet, her resolve hardening. She wasn't going to destroy them, at least not yet, but she could show them what they were up against. With a deep breath, she activated the armor's communication systems, broadcasting a signal far and wide. "This is Captain Lyanna Hayes, of the human fleet," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "This is not the path of conquest. This is the path of unity. Stand down, Virak, and all who follow. There is another way." For a long moment, there was silence. The Virak fleet hovered, uncertain. But then, one by one, they began to pull back, retreating into the darkness of space. The message had been heard. The Virak fleet pulled back, but Lyanna knew that this wasn't the end. The brief moment of victory was fragile, fleeting. She had struck a chord, yes, but would it be enough to change the course of the war? She couldn't afford to be naive. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for something far bigger. A future where war didn't define them. As the Virak ships retreated, Lyanna turned her focus back to the battlefield. The ground around her was littered with debris, destroyed weapons, discarded armor, and the bodies of fallen soldiers. She felt a pang of guilt, of sorrow, but she pushed it aside. It was the price of peace, wasn't it? Every victory came at a cost, but she would not let the weight of those who had fallen stop her from trying to change the future. Not when so much was at stake. The armor hummed, and a new vision bloomed in her mind. A network of allies scattered across the galaxy. She had learned, in those brief moments of communion with the Excelfor, that her fight was never going to be just about one species or one planet. It was about everyone. The armor wasn't just an instrument of power, it was a beacon, a tool for uniting the disparate forces of the galaxy. If the Virak could be reasoned with, perhaps others could too. But there were factions far worse than the Virak. Tyrants, warlords, and ruthless conquerors who would see the galaxy burn before they'd let peace reign. Lyanna needed to act quickly, to solidify her alliances, to expand the message of peace, before those who sought to dominate reasserted control. As she gathered her thoughts, a soft, familiar voice echoed through the communication systems of the armor. It was Commander Thorn, her closest ally from the human fleet. "Lyanna," he said, his voice urgent, "the situation's deteriorating. The Virak were only one piece of the puzzle. There's word of a much larger threat emerging. An alliance of several warring factions, each vying for control of the galaxy. They'll unite under a banner of power, and they won't hesitate to crush anyone who stands in their way. We need you." Lyanna's jaw tightened. She had expected this. The Virak were a symptom, not the cause. And now, the true enemy was showing itself. "I'm not done yet, Thorn," she replied, her voice firm. "This isn't over. The Excelfor has shown me the way forward. But we can't do this alone. We need to unite, every species, every voice." Thorn's tone softened. "Then we'll help you. We've got resources, support. You just need to lead." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air. She was leading now, not just a group of soldiers, but an entire galaxy. She would need more than just strength. She would need wisdom, courage, and most of all, the ability to unite forces that had fought for centuries. Lyanna's eyes narrowed as she gazed at the stars above, a deep resolve settling in her chest. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. But this time, she wasn't going to fight for survival alone. She was going to fight for the future. Lyanna stood at the helm of a massive interstellar fleet, the Excelfor armor gleaming in the soft glow of the command room's lights. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic map in front of her, which displayed the galaxy's volatile, ever-changing landscape. The factions had begun to align. First the Virak, then several smaller systems, all seeing the truth in her message. But the real challenge was yet to come. She wasn't just leading a battle anymore. She was leading an ideological revolution. The Galaxies' wars were not just about resources, territory, or even survival. They were about a belief in something greater: unity, peace, and the ultimate challenge would be convincing those still bent on war that this new path was one they couldn't ignore. The communication systems buzzed to life as Commander Thorne's voice crackled through the comms. "Liana, we've received word. The Confederation of Warlords, the last major holdout, has issued a challenge. They want to test the armor's power. They believe they can break it." Liana didn't flinch. The warlords had underestimated her from the beginning, believing the Excelfar to be just another weapon, something they could subdue with brute force. They were wrong, and this would be their final mistake. "Send word that we accept their challenge," she replied, her voice resolute. "We don't need to break them with power. We need to show them that there is another way, one that doesn't lead to more bloodshed." Thorne hesitated, then spoke again. "Are you sure about this? The battle will be intense. These warlords are ruthless, and they won't hesitate to strike first." "I know," Liana said, her tone firm. "But if we win this fight, without firing a single shot, they'll see it. They'll understand that we are not just another faction seeking dominance. We are the future. We are humanity's hope, and they'll either join us, or they'll be left behind." As the fleet prepared for the final confrontation, Liana sat quietly, contemplating the path that had brought her here. She thought of the ruins where it all began, of the armor that had chosen her, and the vision it had shared. The vision of a united galaxy, freed from the endless cycle of violence. She knew it wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was long, filled with obstacles and temptations. But she was ready. The armor wasn't just an extension of her strength. It was a reflection of the strength she'd found within herself. The strength to believe in a better way. As the enemy fleet emerged from the void, Liana stood tall, her heart steady. The stars above flickered, and for the first time in history, the promise of peace seemed real. The battle was on.